Ambassador Zorothvel walked slowly into the great chamber of the Galactic Council. His purple skin had turned pale, and his four hands were shaking slightly. He had been alive for 300 years, and he had seen many terrible things in that time. But today, he was more afraid than he had ever been. The chamber was enormous. It was built on Nexus Prime, the capital world of the galactic government. The ceiling rose so high that clouds sometimes formed inside the building. Thousands of seats filled the room, arranged in circles that went up and up like the inside of a bowl. Representatives from 47 different species sat in those seats. Some had scales. Some had fur. Some had tentacles. Some looked like nothing Zoroth could describe with words. All of them had come to hear about the invasion plan. High Commander Threx of the Vorn Empire stood at the center of the chamber. He was twice the size of Zoroth, with thick gray armor covering his body. His face had mandibles that clicked together when he spoke. The Vorn were warriors. They had conquered dozens of worlds. They had never lost a war. The invasion of the Sol system will begin in 30 rotations, Threx announced. His voice echoed through the chamber. The primitive species on the third planet will be subjugated. Their resources will be claimed for the consortium. This matter is decided. Zoroth raised one of his hands. I request permission to speak. Threx looked at him with annoyance. The ambassador from the observation corps may speak. Zoroth walked to the center of the chamber. He could feel thousands of eyes watching him. His job for the past 40 years had been to study the humans of Earth. He had watched them through hidden probes. He had analyzed their transmissions. He had learned their languages and their history. And he had come to a terrible conclusion. Esteemed council member, Zoroth began, I must formally advise against this invasion. The species called humans present dangers that our military planners have not understood. Laughter rippled through the chamber. Admiral Silex of the Consortium Navy waved a tentacle dismissively. You speak of beings who have barely left their own atmosphere. They fight each other with chemical explosives and metal projectiles. Their most advanced vessels cannot even reach the outer planets of their own system. What threat could they possibly present to our fleet? They are divided into hundreds of separate nations, Threx added. They spend more time killing each other than exploring their own world. They are primitive and violent and weak. Zoroth nodded slowly. Yes, they are violent. That is exactly what concerns me. He activated a holographic display that floated in the air above the chamber floor. Images began to appear. These images come from human history. I want you to look at them carefully. The first image showed soldiers climbing out of muddy trenches, running toward each other across a field filled with smoke and fire. Bodies lay everywhere. Explosions tore the ground apart. This is from a conflict they called the First World War. It lasted for years. 17 million humans died. They kept fighting even when the death count became impossible to comprehend. The next image showed a city in ruins. Everything was flattened. A mushroom cloud rose in the background. This is what they did to themselves with their first nuclear weapons. They killed hundreds of thousands of their own kind in a single moment. And then they built more of these weapons. Thousands more. Enough to destroy their own planet many times over. More images appeared. Soldiers marching through snow. Cities burning. Ships sinking in dark water. Pilots climbing into aircraft with smiles on their faces, knowing they would not return. The humans have been practicing war for their entire recorded history. It is not a last resort for them. It is something they have perfected over thousands of years. They have turned the killing of their enemies into an art form. Threx made a sound of contempt. All this proves is that they are savages. Our shields can withstand their nuclear weapons. Our armor can stop their projectiles. Our ships can destroy their cities from orbit. They cannot even reach us to fight. That is what the enemy always believes at first, Zoroth said quietly. And then the humans find a way. They always find a way. He changed the display to show a graph. Look at the speed of their technological development. 200 years ago, they traveled by horse. 100 years ago, they learned to fly. 50 years ago, they reached their moon. They adapt faster than any species I have ever studied. When they face a problem, they solve it. When they face an enemy, they learn to defeat it. overestimate them, Admiral Silex said. Perhaps you have spent too long studying these creatures. You have become sympathetic to them. Zoroth turned to face the Admiral directly. I am not sympathetic. I am terrified. You do not understand what you are about to awaken. The humans are not dangerous because of their weapons. They are dangerous because of how they think. They do not surrender. They do not give up. When you push them into a corner, they do not lie down and die. They find ways to hurt you that you never imagined possible. He pulled up one more image. It showed a group of human soldiers standing on top of a tank. They were thin and dirty and exhausted, but they were smiling. Behind them, an enemy city was burning. These humans had been fighting for 4 years against an enemy with better weapons, better training, and more soldiers. They were supposed to lose. Everyone expected them to lose. But they did not lose. They won. Because they refused to accept that winning was impossible. Threx stepped forward, his mandibles clicking with anger. Enough of this cowardice. The decision has been made. The Sol system controls the junction of 3 major hyperspace lanes. Its resources are valuable. The humans will be given a choice: submit or be destroyed. Based on everything you have told us, they will probably choose to fight. And then we will eliminate them. Zorath looked around the chamber. He saw impatience on the faces of some representatives, amusement on others. Nobody was taking him seriously. Nobody understood. I have said what I came to say, Zorath replied. I have done my duty as an observer and advisor. If you choose to ignore my warning, there is nothing more I can do. He began walking toward the exit. Where are you going? Threx demanded. Zoroth paused at the door. I am going to pray. I am going to pray for our soldiers who will die in the invasion. I am going to pray for our worlds that the humans will eventually reach. And I am going to pray that when the humans come for us, they remember that at least one voice spoke against this madness. He left the chamber. Behind him, the council voted unanimously to proceed with the invasion. 30 rotations later, the fleet launched toward Earth. 17 massive warships, each one capable of destroying a continent. Thousands of smaller vessels filled with soldiers. Enough firepower to conquer a dozen worlds, Ambassador? Zorath Vel watched them go from his window on Nexus Prime. He had seen the future in his mind. He had seen the blood and fire that was coming. Not just for the humans. For everyone. May the cosmic winds have mercy on us all, he whispered to himself. Because the humans certainly will not. The stars seemed cold and distant as the fleet disappeared into hyperspace. The war had begun. Commander Samuel Burke had not slept in 36 hours. He stood in the operations center, deep beneath Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado, staring at screens that showed him impossible things. His coffee had gone cold hours ago. His uniform was wrinkled. None of that mattered anymore. The first alert had come 2 days ago. Satellites had detected a massive energy signature at the edge of the solar system, far beyond the orbit of Neptune. At first, the scientists thought it was some kind of natural phenomenon. A comet, perhaps, or a burst of radiation from deep space. But the signature kept moving, and it kept getting closer. Now there were 17 objects in clear view. 17 enormous vessels. Each one larger than any city on Earth. They moved through space in perfect formation, approaching the planet at speeds that should have been impossible. Human spacecraft needed months to reach Mars. These ships had crossed half the solar system in less than 2 days. Still no response to our transmissions, Lieutenant Maria Gonzalez reported from her station. She was young, only 26 years old, but she was one of the best communications officers in the military. We have broadcast greetings in every language. Mathematical sequences. Musical recordings. Everything we could think of. They are not answering. They are not here to talk, Burke said quietly. He had known it from the moment he saw the formation. These were not exploration vessels. They were warships. The arrangement, the speed, the way they moved together like a single organism. This was an invasion fleet. He picked up the red phone on his desk. It connected directly to the highest levels of government. This is Commander Burke. Authorization code, Victor Sevan Sevan Delta. Implement protocol, midnight. This is not a drill. Protocol Midnight was something nobody had ever expected to use. It was designed for a scenario that most people considered science fiction. First contact with hostile alien life. But Burke had helped write the protocol 5 years ago, and he had always suspected this day might come. Humans had been broadcasting their presence into space for over a century. Radio signals, television transmissions, radar pulses. They had been announcing their existence to the universe like a child shouting in a dark forest. Something had heard them. Within hours, the world began to change. Old enemies became allies. Russian generals spoke directly with American admirals. Chinese cyber warfare units shared intelligence with European agencies. Middle Eastern nations opened their airspace to Western aircraft. African countries mobilized their armies. South American governments activated their reserves. For the first time in human history, the entire species was working together. President Catherine Holmes addressed the world from the White House. She was 62 years old. A former Marine who had served in 2 wars before entering politics. Her gray hair was pulled back in a severe style, and her eyes showed no fear. She had faced death before. She would face it again, my fellow humans, she began, speaking into cameras that broadcast to every screen on the planet. By now, you have all seen the images. You know what is approaching our world? We do not know who they are or what they want. We only know that they have not answered our attempts at peaceful communication. She paused, letting the words sink in. In homes and offices and shelters around the world, billions of people watched and waited. I want to be honest with you, Holmes continued. We do not know if we can win this fight. These beings have technology far beyond anything we possess. Their ships are larger than anything we have ever built. They have crossed distances that would take us decades to travel. In any rational analysis, we are outmatched. Another pause. Her jaw tightened. But we are not a rational species. We are humans. We are the descendants of people who survived ice ages with nothing but fire and animal skins. We are the children of those who sailed across oceans without maps, who climbed mountains because they were there, who reached for the moon and touched it with their own hands. We have never accepted that anything was impossible. The alien fleet had taken up positions in orbit around Earth. They hung in the sky like dark moons, visible even during daylight hours. People around the world looked up at them with fear, but also with something else, something that looked like anger. At exactly noon Greenwich Mean Time, a transmission came from the largest alien vessel. Linguists and computer systems around the world worked frantically to decode it. Within an hour, they had a translation. People of Earth, you are now subjects of the Galactic Consortium. Your world and all its resources are claimed in the name of the Vorn Empire. You will surrender your governments and your military assets immediately. All weapons will be destroyed. All resistance will be punished. Leaders will report 2 designated collection points for processing. You have 1 planetary rotation to comply. Failure to comply will result in the destruction of your major population centers. This is not a negotiation. This is a notification. The message repeated in every human language. Over and over again, the same words. Surrender or die. President Holmes convened an emergency meeting with world leaders. It lasted less than 30 minutes. The vote was unanimous. She returned to the cameras. Behind her, the flags of every nation on Earth hung side by side. To the invaders above our world, we have received your ultimatum. We understand your demands, and we have an answer for you. She leaned forward slightly, her eyes hard as stone. We are a species of 7 billion souls. We have survived ice ages, plagues, famines, and world wars. We have survived our own worst impulses and our most destructive technologies. We have climbed out of caves and reached for the stars. You think you can frighten us with your ships and your threats? You do not know us at all. Her voice rose, filled with cold fury. You have made a critical error in judgment. For thousands of years, we have fought among ourselves. We have wasted our strength on petty conflicts and meaningless borders. But you have given us something we have always lacked. You have given us unity. You have given us a common enemy. And now, You will learn what happens when humans stop fighting each other and start fighting together. She stood tall, her shoulders squared. Our answer to your demand is the same answer we have given to every tyrant, every invader, every bully in our history. No, we will not surrender. We will not submit. We will fight you with everything we have. And when our weapons fail, we will fight you with our hands. And when our hands fail, we will fight you with our teeth. You want our world? Come and take it. If you can, the transmission ended. Around the world, people who had been afraid found something stronger than fear growing in their hearts. They found rage. They found determination. They found the ancient human instinct that had carried their ancestors through every disaster and every war, in bunkers and command centers, in homes and shelters, in cities and villages. Humanity prepared for war. The aliens had expected submission. They had expected fear. They had expected humans to be rational. They were about to learn how wrong they were. High Commander Threx stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the bombardment begin. Energy beams lanced down from orbit, striking military installations and government buildings across the planet below. Explosions bloomed like flowers of fire across continents. Smoke rose in columns that could be seen from space. He expected the war to be over within hours. The humans had no shields, no energy weapons, no spacecraft capable of reaching his fleet. Their primitive missiles could not penetrate his defenses. Their nuclear weapons were intercepted and destroyed before they came anywhere close to his ships. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned, but hours passed, and the humans did not surrender. Days passed, and they still fought. His ground forces landed in dozens of locations around the planet, expecting to find broken and terrified populations ready to submit. Instead, they found resistance. Sergeant Carlos Reyes crouched behind a pile of rubble that had once been a shopping mall in Los Angeles. 3 weeks had passed since the invasion began. The city was mostly ruins now. Fires burned everywhere. The air smelled like smoke and death. But Carlos and his squad were still alive. They were still fighting. He had learned a lot about the enemy in those 3 weeks. The Vorn soldiers were big and strong, nearly 8 feet tall, with thick armor covering their bodies. They carried energy weapons that could vaporize a human with a single shot. Their scanning equipment could detect movement and heat signatures from hundreds of meters away. On paper, they were unbeatable. But the Vorn had weaknesses. Carlos and his fellow soldiers had discovered them through trial and error, through death and sacrifice, through the stubborn human refusal to accept defeat. The Vorn were strong, but they were slow. Their reflexes were not as fast as human reflexes. In close combat, quick human could dodge their attacks and strike at the gaps in their armor. Their armor could stop bullets, but it could not stop everything. A college student in Houston had discovered that thermite charges placed directly against the armor could burn through it. Now every human squad carried homemade thermite grenades. Mixed from aluminum powder and iron oxide, their shields could block human weapons. But the shields flickered at certain frequencies. A graduate student in Kansas had figured this out while experimenting with her microwave oven. Now human engineers were building microwave emitters that could disrupt alien shields. Their scanners could detect normal human heat signatures, but not humans wrapped in emergency blankets lined with copper mesh. This discovery had come from a survivalist blogger in Montana. Now, every resistance fighter carried a reflective blanket in their pack. Contact Private Danny Kim whispered. 8 Vorn soldiers, 2 blocks north, moving toward us. Carlos looked at his squad. There were 7 of them left. 2 weeks ago, there had been 20. The others had died fighting, buying time for civilians to escape, holding positions that could not be held. Their names were carved into Carlos's memory. He would carry them forever. Formation Delta, he said quietly. Danny hit their shields with the microwave. Everyone else, wait for my signal. The Vorn patrol moved through the ruins, their scanners sweeping back and forth. They did not detect the humans hidden among the debris. Their scanners showed nothing but cold rubble and empty buildings. Danny activated the microwave emitter. It was an ugly device, built from parts salvaged from a dozen different machines, but it worked. An invisible beam struck the lead Vorn soldier. His shield flickered and died. Carlos threw his thermite grenade. It landed perfectly on the soldier's chest and ignited with a blinding white light. The Vorn screamed as the thermite burned through his armor and into his body. The rest of the squad opened fire. Human bullets could not penetrate Vorn armor, but they could knock the soldiers off balance. 2 more thermite grenades found their marks. The Vorn tried to return fire, but the humans were already moving, darting between cover, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted. 12 seconds. That was how long the battle lasted. 8 Vorn soldiers lay dead in the rubble. Their weapons and equipment were already being collected. Every piece of alien technology that fell into human hands was studied and analyzed. Somewhere in Nevada, scientists worked around the clock to understand how it all worked. The first human energy weapons were already being manufactured. They were crude copies, powered by car batteries and assembled in high school workshops. But they worked. Humans were learning. Humans were adapting. Humans were getting stronger. High Commander Threx received reports from across the planet. His forces were dying faster than he had anticipated. For every human position they captured, another appeared somewhere else. When they destroyed a city, the survivors melted into the countryside and continued fighting. There was no central command to destroy, no government to force into submission. The humans seemed to have an infinite capacity for resistance. They should have broken by now, he told his officers. No species can sustain these losses and keep fighting. But the humans did not know they should be broken. Or perhaps they knew and simply did not care. Ambassador Zorithvel had been watching the war from his office on Nexus Prime. He had access to classified military channels, and what he saw confirmed his worst fears. The humans were not just surviving. They were evolving. Every day, they learned something new. Every battle made them more dangerous. He began transmitting information to Earth through secret channels, fleet positions, shield frequencies, weaknesses in Vorn armor. He was committing treason, and he knew the punishment would be death if he was discovered. But he had seen the future. If the Vorn won this war, they would exterminate the humans completely. And if the humans won, they would remember who had helped them. General Patricia Vance received Zoroth's transmissions in a bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains. She was 64 years old, a veteran of 3 wars, and the commander of what remained of Earth's organized military forces. When she read the intelligence from the alien ambassador, she smiled for the first time in weeks. "Forward this to every resistance cell on the planet," she ordered, "and send a message back to our friend. Tell him we appreciate the help. Tell him we will remember." The war continued. Humans died by the millions, but they kept fighting. They fought in cities and forests, in deserts and mountains, in the ruins of everything they had built. They fought with guns and bombs and knives in their bare hands. They fought because surrender was not in their nature. They fought because giving up meant the end of everything they loved. And slowly, possibly, the tide began to turn. The humans were no longer just surviving. They were winning. 6 months had passed since the invasion began. High Commander Threx stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at reports that made no sense to him. His hands trembled with a mixture of rage and something he had never felt before: fear. He had lost 60% of his ground forces, 60%. In 6 months, against a species that had never fought an interstellar war before, against primitives with chemical weapons and metal projectiles. It was impossible. It was humiliating. It was terrifying. The humans had captured 3 of his warships. 3, he still did not fully understand how they had done it. His ships were in orbit, protected by shields and weapon systems that should have made them untouchable. But the humans had found a way. They had launched themselves from high-altitude aircraft, riding in crude capsules with barely enough oxygen to survive. They had drifted through the vacuum of space on nothing but mathematics and courage, timing their approach to slip through gaps in his sensor coverage. They had cut through the hulls with plasma torches, breaching airlocks and flooding his ships with soldiers who fought like demons. His crews had resisted, of course. Vorn warriors were trained from birth for combat. but the humans seemed immune to fear. They charged into energy weapon fire without hesitation. They detonated explosives strapped to their own bodies to take out critical systems. They fought in ways that no sane species would consider. One human soldier had been cornered in an engine room, surrounded by a dozen Vorn warriors. Instead of surrendering, he had destroyed the room's power coupling, killing himself and everyone around him. The explosion had crippled the ship's propulsion system. 2 days later, human boarding parties had captured the vessel. Threx had asked his intelligence officers to explain this behavior. How could any being choose death so readily? How could they sacrifice themselves without hesitation? The answer had chilled him. The humans have a concept called dying for a cause, his chief analyst had reported. They believe that some things are more important than individual survival. Their history is filled with examples. Soldiers holding positions until the last warrior falls. Pilots crashing their aircraft into enemy ships. Civilians choosing death over submission. They do not view death as the worst possible outcome. That was when Threx had begun to understand what he was fighting against. The humans were not just soldiers defending their territory. They were believers fighting for their existence. And believers were the most dangerous enemies in the universe. The humans were learning at an impossible rate. Their weapons had evolved from primitive chemical propellants to electromagnetic railguns capable of threatening his destroyers. Their nuclear devices had been refined into shaped charges that could penetrate shield harmonics. A computer virus designed by human programmers had infected his fleet's communication network. Causing chaos in logistics and coordination, every day brought new surprises, new weapons, new tactics, new ways to kill Vorn soldiers. The humans shared information instantly across their entire planet. When one group discovered a weakness, every other group knew about it within hours. They were like a single organism with billions of cells, all working together toward a common goal. On Earth, the final phase of Operation Prometheus was underway. Dr. Linda Shaw led a team of scientists working in a converted salt mine in Utah. Before the invasion, she had been a theoretical physicist specializing in exotic energy systems. Now she was building weapons. The project had seemed impossible at first. Create a hyperspace-capable missile using captured alien technology and human engineering. The aliens had taken thousands of years to develop hyperspace travel. Linda's team had 8 months, but they had advantages the aliens had not possessed. They had desperate motivation. They had the combined knowledge of every scientist on Earth, and they had something else, a complete lack of respect for what was supposed to be impossible. Vorn designed their hyperspace systems for ships. Linda explained to General Vance during a briefing, large vessels with living crews that need life support and navigation systems. We do not need any of that. We just need to send a warhead from one point to another. Faster, smaller, simpler. She showed the general a schematic. The device looked crude compared to alien technology, a cylinder of metal and wire and salvaged components. But the mathematics were sound. The engineering was solid. If this works, Linda said, we can strike their homeworld. One missile, carrying a warhead powerful enough to destroy their primary military shipyard. We end their ability to build more ships. We end this war in one blow. General Vance studied the schematic for a long moment. And if it does not work, Linda met her eyes. Then we will have shown them something important. We will have shown them that nowhere is safe from us. That distance means nothing. That if they kill every human on Earth, their children's children will still look up at the stars and wonder when the human ghosts will come for revenge. The weapon was built in secret. Thousands of people worked on different components without knowing what they were creating. Security was absolute. Not a single piece of information leaked to the enemy. On a Tuesday morning, 6 months and 12 days after the invasion began, the missile launched from a hidden facility in the Utah desert. It rose through the atmosphere on chemical rockets, reaching the edge of space where the alien influence was weakest. Then the hyperspace drive activated. The missile vanished. One moment it was there, visible on radar and optical sensors. The next moment it was gone, slipping into a dimension that human physicists had only theorized about a year before. It emerged 3 days later, 80 light-years away, directly above the Vorn homeworld. The alien defense systems detected it immediately. Warning signals flashed across the planet. Ships moved to intercept. But the missile was traveling at speeds that made interception impossible. It struck the primary military shipyard at the center of the main continent. The warhead detonated with the force of 1,000 nuclear weapons combined. The explosion was visible from space. The shipyard, the largest construction facility in the Vorn Empire, ceased to exist. Along with it went 37 partially built warships and the industrial capacity to replace them. Hi, Commander Threx received the news while reviewing casualty reports on his bridge. For a long moment, he simply stared at the screen, unable to comprehend what he was seeing. The humans had struck his homeworld. The humans had reached across 80 light-years of space and destroyed a target that should have been untouchable. He whispered, "How is this possible?" His second-in-command had no answer. None of them did. On Earth, the news spread within hours. The humans had struck back. The humans had proven that they could reach any target in the galaxy. The impossible had become possible. In bunkers and shelters, cities and villages, humans celebrated for the first time in 6 months. They wept and laughed and held each other close. They had not won the war yet. There was still fighting to be done, still battles to be won, still sacrifices to be made. But for the first time since the invasion began, they knew they could win. High Commander Threx looked at the reports from his homeworld. The images of destruction and chaos, at the casualty figures that made his invasion losses seem trivial. And he finally understood what Ambassador Zorth Vel had tried to tell the Council. 6 months ago, he had awakened something terrible. And now that something was coming for him, the Galactic Council chamber on Nexus Prime had never been so silent. Representatives from 47 species sat in their seats, but nobody spoke. Nobody moved. They simply stared at the center of the room, where something impossible was happening. Humans had come to Nexus Prime. There were 5 of them. Sitting in chairs that had been hastily constructed to accommodate their physiology, they wore simple gray uniforms with a patch on their shoulders showing Earth against a field of stars. They looked small compared to many of the aliens in the chamber. Small and fragile and soft. But every being in that room knew what these small, fragile creatures had done. They had defeated the Vorn Empire. They had destroyed a military shipyard 80 light-years away. They had captured warships through methods that defied all tactical logic. They had turned primitive technology into weapons capable of threatening the greatest military power in the galaxy. Ambassador. Zorth Vel stood at the speaker's platform. His purple skin had regained some of its color, but his hands still shook slightly. He had been waiting for this moment for 18 months. He had been dreading it and hoping for it in equal measure. "I warned you," he said, his voice echoing through the silent chamber. "I stood in this very room and told you not to invade Earth. I told you the humans were dangerous. I told you they would not surrender, would not break, would not behave like any other species you had conquered. You did not listen." He turned to look at the human delegation. Their leader was a woman named Commander Sophia Hart. She had commanded the assault that captured the Vorn flagship. She had personally killed 11 Vorn soldiers during that battle. Her face showed no expression, but her eyes held the weight of everything she had seen and done. "The Vorn Empire has surrendered unconditionally," Zorth continued, turning back to the Council. "Their fleet is destroyed. Their homeworld is in chaos. Their colonies have requested protection from the humans. From the species you thought was primitive and weak." He activated a holographic display. Numbers and images filled the air above the chamber floor. "Let me show you what the humans accomplished in 18 months. They reverse-engineered our hyperspace technology. They've built weapons capable of matching our energy systems. They developed tactics that our military experts still cannot fully understand. They did all of this while their cities burned, while millions of their people died, while facing an enemy with every possible advantage." The images changed, showing human soldiers fighting in ruined cities, scientists working in underground laboratories, engineers assembling weapons from salvaged parts. They lost 400 million people in this war. 400 million. Any other species would have surrendered after losing a fraction of that number. The humans lost 400 million and kept fighting. They did not stop until they had one. Admiral Silex shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He had been one of the loudest voices supporting the invasion. Now he could not meet the eyes of the human delegation. High Commander Threx is dead, Zorath said. He died when his flagship was boarded during the final battle. The humans took no prisoners that day. They killed everyone aboard, then turned the ship's weapons on the rest of the Vorn fleet. He paused. I want you all to understand something. The humans did not have to be this way. Before the invasion, they were a divided species, fighting among themselves over resources and ideology. They might have remained that way for centuries, slowly developing, eventually joining the galactic community as a minor power. His voice hardened. You changed that. You united them. You gave them a common enemy and a reason to evolve. You turned a species of squabbling nations into the most dangerous civilization in known space. Congratulations. He stepped aside, gesturing toward the human delegation. Commander Hart, the floor is yours. Sophia stood slowly. She was not tall by human standards, barely average height for her species. But somehow, in that moment, she seemed to fill the entire chamber. Every eye turned toward her. Every breath was held. My name is Sophia Hart, she said. Her voice was calm and steady. 18 months ago, I was a commander in the United States Space Force. I spent my days running training simulations and writing reports about hypothetical alien contact scenarios. Then your ships appeared in our sky, and everything changed. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of species after species. You killed my brother in the first bombardment. He was a teacher in San Diego. He had never hurt anyone in his life. Your weapons vaporized him, along with 300,000 other civilians. Her expression did not change, but something in her voice made several representatives look away. You killed my husband during the ground invasion. He was a medic trying to evacuate wounded from a hospital in Seattle. Your soldiers shot him while he was carrying a child to safety. The child died too. She paused, letting the words hang in the air. I am not telling you this to make you feel guilty. I am telling you this so you understand who you are dealing with. Every human in our military has a story like mine. Every one of us lost someone we loved. Every one of us has a reason to hate you. She walked forward, closer to the council seats. Several representatives instinctively leaned back. But we did not come here for revenge. We could have destroyed your ships when they surrendered. We could have bombarded your colonies until nothing remained. We chose not to. We chose mercy. Do you understand how hard that choice was? Do you understand what it cost us? She stopped in the center of the chamber, surrounded by alien faces. The Galactic Council formally recognizes Earth and its territories as a sovereign power. Ambassador Zorath told me this would be announced today. We accept your recognition. We will consider your offer of membership in the Consortium of Peaceful Worlds. She turned in a slow circle, looking at every representative in turn. But let me be clear about something. We are not here to make friends. We are not here to integrate quietly into your galactic community. We are here to ensure that what happened to us never happens to anyone else. Her voice rose, filling the chamber with cold authority. If any member of this council threatens a defenseless world, if any empire decides to subjugate a weaker species, if any military power believes it can conquer and enslave with impunity, they will answer to us. We will not wait for authorization from this council. We will not engage in diplomatic negotiations. We will do what we did to the Vorn. We will come for you in the night. We will find your weaknesses and exploit them. We will make you pay for every innocent life you take. Admiral Salix found his voice. You would make yourselves the galaxy's guardians? By what right? Sophia smiled, but there was no warmth in it. By the right of what we survived? By the right of 400 million dead humans, whose ghosts demand that their sacrifice meant something? By the right of a species that clawed its way from the edge of extinction to stand here, in your chamber, telling you how things are going to be. She walked back to her chair and sat down. We are what you made us. You came to our world with fire and death. You thought we would break. Instead, you forged us into something new. So yes, we will watch. We will wait. And if you give us reason, we will remember that we learned how to fight among the stars." The chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then, Ambassador Zoreth Vel stepped forward one last time. "The council will adjourn to consider the implications of today's events. But I want to say something personally." He looked at the human delegation with an expression that mixed respect and sorrow. "I spent 40 years studying your species. I thought I understood you. I was wrong. You are more resilient, more adaptable, and more dangerous than I ever imagined. I hope for all our sakes that we never give you reason to show us just how dangerous you can be." He bowed slightly toward Sophia Hart. "Oh, come to the galaxy, humans. May we all survive the experience." The session ended. The representatives filed out of the chamber, many of them glancing nervously at the human delegation as they left. A new era had begun for the galaxy. An era in which the small, fragile species from the third planet of an unremarkable star had become the most feared civilization in known space, on Earth. Humanity looked up at the stars they had once dreamed of reaching in peace. They had reached them now, but the dream had changed. They were no longer just explorers or dreamers. They were survivors. They were warriors. They were guardians. And they would never forget. What it had cost them to become all three, the universe had wanted to know if humanity was alone. Now, it had its answer. Humans were not alone. They were watching. They were waiting. And the galaxy would never be the same.